Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with
Nerdarchist Ted.
magic items and Dungeons and Dragons. What is the right number for your game?
Jump down to the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
All right, let's get this magical edition of Nerdarchy on the road. So we were consulting Xanathar's Guide to Everything and looking at some things, and we were kind of thinking about magic items in the game and if we're doing it right or if we agree with what Wizards of the Coast says. Because at 20th level, essentially they're saying you should have introduced 100, 125 items into your campaign.
So, page 135 of Xanathar's Guide says that, on average, by the time the characters reach 20th level, there should have been 100 magic items into the game, and over the course of your planning, you should be introducing 25% more because the players are not going to find everything. Now, however you want to determine that, okay, well, I'm putting 10 here, so I'm really putting 12, 13, because they're going to miss something.
And well, here's the weird part, right? Because it's 100 items per adventuring party. So how do you even figure that out? Is it, what if this one adventure party has 3 players and another has 9? Like, there's a huge swing there as far as like per player.
So
what you're looking at.
So let's just say that an average adventuring party has 5 players. So that would mean 20 per person, and then go from there.
And then 5 extra for each one to miss.
Right. So I think that gives you your guidelines for what you should be doing, and this is going to factor in. Okay, well, early levels you're going to get a +1, then you're going to get a +2, then you might eventually get a +3, or an artifact or a legendary, whatever you want to call it, and those other items become not useful. So that's going to factor that. Well, that's your weapon, that's your armor, so that's going to be 6. Now, what about consumables? Your extra things that are out there, whether it be, cloaks and rings and jewelry and what have you. But
something's got to make up the difference, because it's not like you're walking around with 20 items on you at all times. Like, even if you do the swap out for some of them, you're still looking at, 14 items or so.
Well, and that's the other side of it is, I think they're really leaning heavily on there should be a lot of consumables. Because I just don't think any character walking around with a veritable store of magic items makes a lot of sense.
I mean, we did that in one campaign, but it was kind of weird. And that was not the normal.
I would love to go back and see what would happen with that kind of campaign where, literally every enemy you fight has got magic items. And by the time we were 18th level, we were rolling up against dudes who they were all rolling with legendary stuff. And it's like, oh, well, we've got, every single item of storage you could possibly have loaded down to bear. We probably were so broken on carrying capacity, it was ridiculous.
It gets to the point where you have to be careful what pocket you reach into with what hand, because you may open up a sphere of annihilation by accident.
It's like, okay, the bracer of Ilhona cannot go into the bag of holding. Got it.
Right, or a glove of storing and things like that. But no, so that being said, so how do you make it up? Where does this come from? So we're talking about a little bit. We're like, well, then consumables. So, but that's a lot of potions and scrolls.
Well, if you really break it down, if you're putting a challenging encounter in on a regular basis where they're going to find new magic items, new consumables, you've got the ability to say, okay, well, you're going to get to hit them harder if you've given them potions. You've got the ability to put in things that are more challenging if they got a couple extra scrolls of fireball or extra, insert whatever spell here to make things easier.
Maybe wands that don't recharge, things like that. What is it? The feather tokens is another one. You use them, they're done. But even still, it feels like there's a very limited amount of items that you're going to be introduced into the game. So, if you're going to go that route and you need that much on the consumable side, it does feel a little boring, right? You got a party of 5. We're talking about, we're saying we have a party of 5, and we're saying each person maybe ends up with 5 to 6 items that are like permanent fixtures. and the rest would be like consumables throughout their career.
Well, you get the 5.
That's
Well,
like 60 items. That's a lot of potions and scrolls. It gets a little monotonous after a while, I think. So how do we spice that up?
well, you've got the ability to make things different than the normal. Okay, you've got a potion, you've got a scroll. These are all normal. You mentioned wands that don't recharge. It's the same thing as a scroll. It's just in a different format.
So what are some things that we could add or we have added in our games? I know in my game, I added. They found a cache of crystals, right? And each crystal coincided with a particular school of magic. So if a caster used that as part of their spell components, it would be consumed, but they would get an extra effect, almost like similar to meta magic feats from the sorcerer. But they would be able to do it, and depending on what exactly the school of magic was, would determine what the extra effect was.
So you have the ability to take stones or runes, and they become something extra, and it's got the ability to, like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to throw the object, and it produces a fireball or a magic missile or what have you. And the moment that it leaves your hand, it's treated just like the spell, but until you make that action, in all ways, it's, just a rock. It's a minor magic item that gets consumed once used. But how interesting would it be to, like, okay, well, I found this rock and I'm going to use it like a skipping stone, and a fireball blossoms in the middle of the lake.
Well, I also like the idea of finding rune stones where it's actually, oh no, it's rune stones, but they're actually, you treat them the same as scrolls. You can either, if you're a wizard, you can take them and put them in your book, or you can cast them, from the stone itself. It depletes the magic, it's gone. But it just makes it seem a little bit more interesting
Paper.
than I just found another scroll just by describing it different. And you could do other things, you could do spell globes. What does that mean? Maybe a spell globe looks kind of like a snow globe or something with something in there, and when you enact it, that effect takes place. And maybe it is a snow globe, right, in essence, but there's a scene in it that corresponds to a spell and in the player's handbook or Xanathar's guide to everything. And you're part of the fun thing is once the players kind of like figure out what they do or what their purpose is, then the fun part is trying to figure out what they do. And you're looking at the globe and the scene in there, and there's clues.
So maybe that type of thing doesn't get affected by an identify spell, and that's part of the nature of it, to prevent people from stealing it. And then it creates its own little role playing challenge of, okay, well, I think I know what it does, so I'm going to use it. And you might be right, you might be wrong.
Right, and you can always introduce fun things like that into your game. Because I actually did see on a Facebook thread either today or the day before where someone was complaining about, my wizards constantly just identify everything. There's no mystery to magic items. Well, that's kind of the problem with like the latter editions of the game, where that part of the game's kind of been removed because it's easier, right? In earlier editions, you didn't know what your stuff did, and it was fun to discover kind of, but also the bookkeeping aspect of it can be a little bit of a pain in the ass.
So if you want to play the style of game where, all right, identify has been removed from player knowledge or player from the player's handbook, you can't just get it. You have to find that, in the course of the game, or you have to find someone to identify stuff for you. That does add that element back into the game if that's something that you want and your players can accept.
Which, that might be another way to like move magic items in and out of the game. In our earlier editions, we did play that way, where there was always a wizard that lived on a hill in a tower, and you'd have to take your stuff to him, and he would identify it and let you know. And a lot of times he'd also be the guy that would buy it from you for a certain amount as well, or maybe it's a place where you can buy magic items if he's buying them, for a higher fee or something like that. So there's things like that you could also introduce into the game. Maybe he trades magic items sometimes. So this would be another way of switching things around.
You have potions and you have oils, and those are things that have been out for a while. In one of the novel series that we've read, the one character actually has like rune, like clay tablets, and she snaps them to enact the magic. So that would be another thing that would be similar to the stones. Could function it just like a wizard spell or another scroll, but in order to cast it, you have to snap the tablet.
Right, and maybe you guys come up with some other interesting ideas for consumable items to fill out that list. Or maybe you're like, screw it. In my game, they just don't get that many items. That's kind of the way I go a little bit. Sometimes it's by design, and sometimes it just happens that way. But the question is, guys, what are you doing with magic items in your games? How prevalent are they? How much do you use consumables? Are you introducing new consumables to your game? Or you just use the ones out of the DMG? We got a place where we can discuss that down in the comments below. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check out the store over at nerdarchy.com.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.